New York. New York. 8.3 million inhabitants, 32,000 streets, 5 boroughs, 3 rivers, which altogether make up one city unlike any other on the planet. What's all the more remarkable is that when you stop to consider what makes the city so recognizable today, whether it be the iconic skyline, famous cultural offerings, or the energy of its streets, you realize that virtually everything that makes New York so renowned the world over simply did not exist even as little as a century ago. That is because much of the city's history has been shaped by constant evolution, development, and renewal, which has transformed New York unimaginably over the years. But how did this city, which started off as a small outpost for European traders just over 400 years ago, evolve into the sprawling megametropolis that it is today? This is how New York became the world's greatest city. Long before the bustling streets and towering skyscrapers of modern-day New York, the area was full of dense forests, flowing rivers, and abundant wildlife. The land itself was home to groups of Algonquian-speaking Native American tribes, chief amongst which were the Lenape people, who lived in harmony with nature, hunting, fishing, and cultivating the land in an undisturbed manner for some 8,000 years until the arrival of the first Europeans. The European exploration and colonization of the Americas began in earnest at the outset of the 16th century, as navigators from nations like Spain, France, and the Netherlands sought out new trade routes to these newly discovered and resource-rich territories. In 1524, the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano, sailing under the flag of France, became the first European to set eyes on the shores of what would one day become New York Harbor. Verrazzano claimed the area in the name of France, although any attempt to follow this up with colonial settlement failed to materialize. It would be almost another 100 years before Europeans would return to the area, and it would be the Dutch who would ultimately leave the first lasting impression on what would eventually become New York City. In 1609, the English explorer Henry Hudson, who was in the employ of the Dutch East India Company, had been tasked with finding the elusive Northwest Passage, purported to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Whilst on this expedition, Hudson sailed up the northern river of New York Harbor, which now bears his name in honor of his discovery. He claimed the land on either side on behalf of the Dutch Republic, and in the process, established a foothold for future Dutch settlement and trade in the region. The following decades saw Dutch trading posts established along the banks of the Hudson River, as well as others dotted along the coastline, stretching from the Delaware River to Cape Cod, which formed the wider territorial claims of the Dutch colony of New Netherland. Initially, these isolated dwellings and their occupants were focused entirely on the commerce produced by the fur trade. But in 1624, the Dutch West India Company decided to send a ship full of colonists to establish permanent civilian settlements in the region. They first landed on what is now Governor's Island, but were then dispersed amongst the chosen sites for settlement across New Netherland. A small group were disembarked on the southern tip of Manhattan after it was decided to construct a fortification there to protect the entrance to the Hudson River and the valuable cargoes of the fur trade which passed upon it. With that, the foundations of Fort Amsterdam were laid out in 1625, and it quickly formed the epicenter of a new settlement which sprung up around it.